Welcome to Belly Button Fluff on My Pillow, the poetic podcast series that approaches mental health and poetry as full amateurs. Welcome to episode 4! My name is Drew Taylor Wilson, my pronouns are they, them, and I am your host and amateur poetry and mental health expert. Poetry, because I write it, usually for therapeutic contexts, and mental health because often the writing it down for therapeutic context isn't enough, so I made a podcast instead. Each week I sit down with a fellow mental health and poetry sufferer as they delightfully perform a poem written just for their sensibilities, and we then wax lyrical about all the poems we've loved and lost. This week's guest is a dear friend of mine, a collaborator of mine, and someone who I am so excited to welcome to the podcast. Say hello, Danielle Jam.
Hello, everyone.
So Danny's going to take us on a beautiful journey just now with a poem called Attic Room Tryst. Take it away.
We met at 14. Teenage dream. You wearing boys' Levi jeans. Part of a gothic queer coven of misunderstood daughters from absent fathers. You, the rebel, me with a torn dress. Both smudged smoky eyes, but that face was never a mess. I could get lost in it. Always framed immaculately by your short hair. A sharp bob that turned into a cropped pixie. That became a short back and sides with a quiff, eventually evolving into your signature zero fade. You made me feel like the sexiest thing to exist. I couldn't resist you. And I still fantasize about that summer, basking in frequent post-sex afterglow, smoking joints out your attic window, back when your mum thought we were just friends, 'cause technically that's all we were when she asked. Never needed to experiment elsewhere. Our bodies were each other's playgrounds. I have only ever really known my way around your anatomy, and I always thought that anything else just wouldn't matter to me. So we never bothered with anyone else at school, never openly actually dated either. I followed you, always the overachiever, to Edinburgh, and we became the lesbian couple to beat. Not that there was any competition, or any need to compete, but if prizes were being given out, we were first in line. You fully embraced butch. It took me a bit longer to align, and landed on somewhere between sporty mid-femme, still long hair, still some makeup, but nothing that took too long. You started lifting weights, body becoming so strong, and you scared me sometimes when we'd row. How you'd throw your weight around. But generally we found an amazing equilibrium together. Two former little girls in a big city, finishing our studies with firsts. We could hurt each other like no one else knew, but most of the time it felt great. Tackling the world together with my best mate. We both graduated, then so did you. To non-binary. A shock to start, but in my heart I knew you were the same, even when you chose a new name. Not the same as in you weren't allowed to change or evolve. I just needed to keep hold of the you I knew when we first fell in love, when we were 14. My teenage dream in boys' Levi jeans. You found the job you'd always been looking for in graphic design. As usual, it took me a while to find what I enjoyed, but I got there. We found a flat that wasn't too run down, in a part of town we both liked, where we both felt safe. And I had faith that this might be it. Forever. The thing is, I never imagined life without you. But the life I'd actually been imagining was not the version of you I was now living with. I was stuck in this loop of attic room trysts and super lesbian power couple poses that I missed. The you that was actually in front of me, this non-binary butch badass graphic designer who could do their own plumbing whilst humming all the words to the Boy Genius album, who could always rustle up a quick comfort mac and cheese and knew exactly where to please me until climax every time. who would always find it difficult to articulate what was wrong, but always the right words to say to make me feel right. And so, after the most epic week of having that fight, I spent the night on a friend's couch and knew that was it. And it felt shit. And it wasn't because you were now non-binary or me having an inability to calm the fuck down or something to do with me not getting a proper diagnosis for my neurodiversity. We had grown apart. At some point in the journey, our hearts had converged elsewhere, and it's fair to say we weren't good for each other anymore. And I will store up all our good time memories and keep them sacred, and hope that you remember me fondly sometimes too, because I really hope the best for the new you.
Fucking hell. I just need a second. That was epic and beautiful and so, yeah, everything that I envisaged for that piece to be. First things first, what pronouns are best used for you?
I am she, they.
She, they.
Yes.
And how are you today?
I am well today. I feel like I am in a place where I've got a routine that I'm excited about day to day.
Yeah.
I've started going to dance classes quite often, and it's something that I've wanted to get back into for a while. And then I've been supplementing that with other fun physical activities like yoga, which I love, or one of the dance fitness classes at that group. I feel like I'm in my body a lot more, and I didn't realize how important that was. Yeah, enjoying how it feels to have a body that's able to move and sweat and being able to feel my emotions, and like I'm so well aware of like having that privilege as an abled person, and just enjoying being in my body at the moment. So yes.
And for those of you that don't know, this glorious human being is one of Scotland's finest performers, and living the life of an actor, in my experience, is often a really sporadic thing in terms of like the routine that you have every single day, and finding space to implement things on a regular basis with that kind of pursuit of jobs in short time frames is a really tricky thing sometimes. So it's really beautiful to hear that you're like finding an equilibrium.
Yeah. Working out what's happening in terms of when I'm going to be working, when I'm not going to be working is not always in my control. So sort of just at a point now where I need to just live the days as I want to and not wait for the work to come. Just trust that I can plan my life out for myself and still enjoy every day, even if I'm not always making enough money or, you know.
Absolutely. And it's about putting those things within your daily practice to keep the brain working in the way we want it to.
Absolutely. How are you?
I'm okay. I'm excited. This venture is a really beautiful thing. I love not having permission. I love this project because I just get to do it and release it, and it's been a really positive response so far. How do we know each other?
Ooh, yeah, so we know each other because I was in your incredibly powerful, fun, gorgeous show. I can't think of enough adjectives to describe how wonderful this experience was. Thick Skin Elastic Heart, which was between the years 2018, I want to say, 19?
Yeah, so I think we started working on it bits in 2018.
Yeah, we did.
But the performing of it happened 2019 into 2020. And literally, like, one of the last shows we did was before the lockdowns. And now actually looking back at it, I remember when we had, because we had the Christmas break in the schedule, and then we came back to do it in the new year. And I ended up missing the show reopening in Aberdeen, and then travelling on with it onto Inverness. And I saw it happen in Aberdeen, but I was so ill, and in fact, me and the assistant director, and looking back at it, we had COVID.
Oh yeah.
Like that's right. And I remember being in this hotel room in Aberdeen, just feeling like utter shit. And that, yeah, and completely looking back with fresh eyes on that experience, I was like, we absolutely got that at that time, and thankfully we didn't pass it on because you guys continued on with it. Yeah, it's sometimes really weird to think of that time frame in my head because it was literally exactly before the lockdown happened.
It was the last job that I did before lockdown, so it was really... It feels even more special to me for that. Yeah. Before the world's kind of flipped upside down for a while.
Talk to me about Attic Room Tourist. How was that to perform?
I thought it was like, when I first read it, I thought it was really quite dark actually, and connected to like the first section about them being teenagers in love, that kind of moody cloud that they would live in together is what is the image that I got, that for better or for worse, like these two people were in it for life, and how intense those feelings can be when you're that age. Yeah. And I definitely relate to like the presentation of like the characters in this as a teenager. I had like this kind of emo phase where I was wearing all the dark clothes and whatever, and like trying to be alternative and listening to listen to all the music that I still love today. It also made me think about the character I was reading as, and their discomfort with their partner being non-binary, and how that sort of sparked something difficult for them. Yeah. And it made me wonder about like femininity, and also being valid as a queer person based on how you present. Yeah. And I think that this character that I was reading as is still on that journey of, can I still be in this world and not want to be butch or mask, and can I still just dress how I want to dress and wear, I don't know, the things that are typically seen as feminine and still exist in this world, but not being able to articulate that, and so that potentially coming out at their non-binary partner who's presenting more masculine than they used to, or well, I mean, they always did. Yeah,
but I think there's something really interesting about that, about how the character's not there yet, and definitely I think the big thing is that they don't, as a couple, it's just not right now. Mm-hmm. But I think it's kind of fascinating that the person you don't hear from is the person who's like kind of settled, and they've worked shit out, and they know what's going on. So and it was a deliberate thing from my point of view as the writer to have that, for us to sit in that messy place with the narrative voice, and I just think you just captured that fucking beautifully.
On first read, I was like, oh no, like, but accept your partner though. like, but why are you like opposed to this? Like, how do I read this and feel like I'm understanding where that person's coming from? Yeah. But that's the challenge about like good writing.
Thanks, mate. You know. Yeah. I wanted to latch on something you were just talking about, that thing of like, definitely part of what happened when we first met was a solidarity with the queer experience, and you do get to have a automatic reference point for lots of things. But I think it's really fascinating you talking about what happens when you don't sit in an automatic space within what we perceive to be the kind of brackets of the queer experience. Mm-hmm. So I guess with that in mind, where within the categories or not? That's my point, I guess.
Yeah, thank you for asking that. I think that's such an important thing to talk about, because I don't think it gets talked about a lot, or I haven't had those conversations a lot recently, and I think that you can only really have them with other queer people. Yes. I guess I'll talk about my pronouns, which are now she, they, and which I added the they some point last year just to try it on, see if it fit. Mm-hmm. And it feels like it does. And that process of making that decision came about because I started going to a queer yoga class on a Wednesday morning, which is one of my favourite places to go. It's a beautiful little community in the south side of Glasgow, and a lot of people there were using they and they them pronouns, and were referring to me as they before they knew what my pronouns were, and realising that, oh, this is a space that I can exist in as sort of like a blank slate in a way, and like without a perceived Yeah, not having this perceived identity based on what I look like. And that felt really freeing. The more that I focus on what's aligned within my own heart and mind is the right thing.
Yeah.
As much as I would really love to be part of more queer spaces and more queer spaces that are for like queer women, sometimes I still have that fear that I'm not gonna fit in to them for some reason. And I think it's because I think like probably every single queer person feels that they're not queer enough, or like they don't, because I've not been in, most of my relationships have been with cis men, and I've not had as many relationships with women or non-binary people. So I think that's the thing that kind of just keeps tweaking at the back of my head, that I'm not going to be part of that. Or if I go into that space, I need to have the confidence to just like walk up to a girl and be like, hey, like, I'm gay, you're gay, let's get to it, you know?
I saw this, and I'm going to drastically misquote this glorious human being. So many people within the LGBTQIA plus umbrella grew up having to adapt their natural instincts to fit into what the society they were in decided was a typical way of being, that it ends up being that in your early 20s, once you're a bit more free of that, that's when you're kind of hitting your like puberty stage, because you get to actually work out who you are and work out how to be and what feels authentic for you. I was really fascinated by you talking about that you have found the space to be able to discover that for yourself, because so much of that is unlearning what we have been told, and not even that you've been told directly, it's that the world around you has told you that through osmosis, through signs, through legislations, through Supreme Courts making fucking stupid decisions. It's like, it's so fascinating how queer people find out who they are, because sometimes it really is like the whole of the world has told you that who you naturally want to be is terrible.
Yeah, it's so true. And it's heartbreaking to hear that as well. But also hearing you say that just reminds me that, oh yeah, it's not just me that feels like that.
Yeah. No, and I hope any glorious queers out there listening to this is sitting there going, yeah. And if not, kind of giving you a bit more understanding, I guess.
I remember you talking about that when we did Thick Skin Elastic Heart together, and I think that was the first time I'd heard that. I was such a baby in that at the time, but I also only really came into my authenticity as a queer person, I guess, for lack of a better term, as an adult as well, leaving home and having my own space and being able to decide what I wanted things to be.
What does it mean to you to create your own family with your partner?
Ooh, oh, I love that.
Because it is, even if there's no children or any pets or even it doesn't have to have anything extra that's living in it. Your family unit can just be you and them.
Yeah, I do see us as family. We're actually engaged. I don't know if I said that.
Oh! Well, that's so funny. I couldn't remember. Your live reaction.
Oh my god.
That's incredible.
Yeah, because the last time I saw you was on your birthday, and that was last year. We went on a holiday to Japan and I proposed.
That's so exciting!
I know.
I'm trying not to like scream massively loudly because the audio is going to go horrible, but that's so fucking cool.
Thank you. Yeah, no, truly. I was so nervous because it's such a final thing, final feeling to be like, let's do this for life and like make it a legally binding thing.
Yeah. And also, I imagine there's also going to be weird stuff about, because you did it and technically you're the woman in this circumstance, and like...
I was surprised at how positive like all of the reactions were to that, actually. Yeah. So I realised like the circle around me is very much past that, so I'm grateful for that. But yeah, I just wanted to make him feel like the cutest little, most precious little being on the planet. Which he did feel like, and I could see it, and I've relived that moment over and over again.
That's so brilliant.
I think for us, like, we've been together for 8.5 years, so getting to know each other over that time and what we need as individuals, and we're a neurodivergent couple as well, so the way that we live is not what you're told that you're meant to live like, in a way. how you communicate with each other and spend time with each other looks different for every couple, and for us it looks like sometimes he'll be video gaming and I'll be embroidering on the couch, and that'll be us hanging out. And also he's not queer, so I think it's so important that you have, if you're in that dynamic, to have your partner be able to support you in every way, shape and form, which he does. But his support looks like facilitating, helping me get to spaces where I can meet other queer people, and like just taking me there, or like finding them and stuff too. So, but we're also polyamorous, so I'm always like hoping that I'll get to experience like a relationship with like a woman or non-binary person that is also fulfilling in my, and sort of validating in a way of my own queer identity too.
So James and I are very lucky. We met each other, so we had our 10-year wedding anniversary this year, and we've been...
Congratulations!
Yeah, it's huge. And then we've been together 14 years. We have the luxury of being able to support other living things around us. So like we have an abundant garden, we have a ridiculous amount of houseplants, we have 2 tropical fish tanks, we have 2 beautiful friendly cats, and there's days where it feels very overwhelming, but there's far more days where it's just the most enriching thing to make that life together. And I think, you know, we're in a different age bracket to you and your partner. James is 5 years older than me, so I just turned 40 a few months ago, and there's been big conversations about having children and what that means, and I think we definitely investigated that for a long time, but with my mental health, it just felt like that was going to be too much of an invasive process with adoption, to have that scrutinised in the way that it often is. But also we're so lucky to be uncles, and it's a term that I still hold on to despite my non-binary identity. Of course it's a very male gendered term, but I keep hold of it as a term because I've worked really hard to be an uncle, and I've worked really hard to be as good uncle as I can, and I love the fact that all my little nibblings in all these different environments turn up, and I mean to the point where I get confused sometimes where they don't know, at a certain age they still can't necessarily tell you apart because they see 2 male-ish figures, and I'm like, dude, I'm the one with a blue face, like, come on. Like, what? Yeah, but it's quite common. It's now been tested. Like nearly every single one of our nibblings will go through a point where they then recognise that Uncle James and Uncle Drew are different people. And I'm always like, surely that's straight away because I have a blue face. Like,
How old are they?
Oh no, it goes right up until like 5 or 6.
Okay.
That we're kind of interchangeable, but after that it's fine. So I'm now used to it.
Yeah, sure. I mean, when I was a kid, I remember, I don't know how old I was, probably around 5 as well, seeing another black man in the shopping centre and shouting "dad" at him, even though my dad was literally like getting our food at the at the canteen, and like shouting at him and like upset that he was walking away from me, and then him coming round and be like, "Danielle, I'm here." Like, surely. Yeah,
but also I think where, like, in the environment you grew up in, there would have been a sociological thing, because you were like, actually, there's not many black men running around, so, oh, there is one. Are you dad?
Yeah, truly. I mean, all of the black people in my life that I knew were my family members growing up, or people at my church, you know, so that definitely, like, must have done things to Danielle's little brain, but
that's kind of massive though. Like,
yeah, definitely. And also the thing of you saying about being an uncle to lots of beautiful nibblings, like, I feel like, so I had an uncle who's no longer here, and also an auntie who's no longer here, on uncle on my dad's side and auntie on my mum's side, and they were both queer, and I just think, like, your young family members are so lucky to have you and James, and I was so lucky to have them, and I was able to have a conversation with my auntie about being queer because she was still here when I had, like, discovered that for myself, and we had a conversation. It was like one of my most treasured memories, but I still, like, feel like they're 2 little fairies on my shoulders that are like encouraging me on every time I do something that celebrates my queerness. I can feel that it's like I'm doing it for them as well. So knowing that them as adults were living in some way connected to their queerness and their authenticity.
I'm going to pivot slightly. That thing where you were talking about that space of spirituality. I don't know if there is anything concrete. I don't know if there's anyone out there necessarily, but you talked about family. What I didn't talk about was the dog that James and I had with each other that passed away last Christmas, that we'd only had for 7 months, it was a horrible circumstance. He viciously attacked us, and it became a circumstance where he was unsafe to be around, and the vet deemed that was the only course of action. And because it was Christmas, there wasn't staff to be able to manage the circumstance. And it was wrenched, his presence with us was wrenched out of us. But a Facebook post came up this morning that was a thing that was our announcing him to the world 2 years ago, and I was literally walking down the street and burst into tears. But definitely that's the closest I felt like having a child in my adult life. The amount of care and all that kind of thing given to him, and to have lost that felt brutal. But it's so fascinating to me, having lived through that experience, where I now put my memories and my support that I feel like I'm getting from people who are no longer with me. That thing where they are, and sometimes I don't know how to describe it other than I feel it. There are some places I go to, there's a field around the corner where I can stand there because I remember being there, and I can hear him, I can hear Vince, our dog, running around that field still. My husband's father passed away recently, and there's a bench in the back of their house that we used to sit and chat on. And the other day I just was missing him so much. And I went and sat on that bench, and I anchored myself, and I could feel him. And I'm fascinated by that spiritual sense, that it feels like you're tapping into yourself.
Yeah, that's funny as well that you say that, because I only really felt that sort of presence when I had a really special summer last year, and I took purposely time off of work because I was working a lot, and I was meditating a lot, and out of that meditation came poetry, which links, and also, so I was meditating, and then I was going to queer yoga, and then I was going on walks in parks and getting lost in different parks and falling asleep and waking up and feeling safe and held and just connected to nature, and that was really special. And then I think it was coming to a posthumous anniversary of my auntie, and I was just walking in between houses and felt, when I was a kid and I was playing in nature somewhere, when, I don't know if you got this as a kid, but you feel some kind of magic is around. And for me, I thought there were fairies existing in little crevices of trees and nooks, and I felt that again as an adult, but it was my auntie, my uncle cheering me on and saying, yay, you're doing it, and you're we're here for you and we're so happy for you, and that was really special to experience. So yeah, that's only a recent thing, because you always hear people saying oh, they're always with you, and they're in your heart, and this, but it wasn't something that I really felt super connected to, that wasn't associated with lots of crying and really difficult emotions, but the groundedness that you said, or for me, was a lightness and not really painful. So yeah, I mean, if that exists for you, then it exists,
Yeah. So I've been a poetry enthusiast since I can remember, but never quite felt qualified to be able to talk about it too much. So maybe this is the exact right time. What's your current relationship to poetry? How does she turn up in your life?
Okay, right. What do I talk about first? How I first find poetry, or
whatever works.
Okay, I think most people in Scotland, I think we were taught poetry at school.
Yeah.
I always said that I would probably study English or English lit if I wasn't an actor.
Oh, okay.
Really enjoyed storytelling, which obviously comes into the core of my acting and the passion for that. Then actually going into adulthood, when my auntie passed, going back to that, which was in 2018, I had a dream about her, that she'd visited me, and that sort of gave me closure. And when I woke up, I wrote this poem, which was, I think, the first time I'd really written a poem.
Yeah.
That I can remember. I'd written songs, so form of that. And so I just kept that in my notes, and I was surprised that it had come out, but it just came out. That's how poetry visits me sometimes. And then last year, when I was out of meditating and like clearing a lot of clutter in my head, I was just like pouring out words that made sense.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping to start going to different places in public and reading them out loud and seeing if they resonate with anyone else.
Well, keep us posted.
Yeah.
That's really exciting.
I will.
So I think to round off the pod today, we're going to return to the classic convention that we started in episode 1, where I share a poem from a corner of the internet that I think is a glorious little space that I'd love people to explore for themselves. This is a poem called Kite. It's by an artist called Reeves, who I first saw when I was a wee baba, so I was 18, and I was doing street team for Edinburgh Festival at the Assembly Rooms on George Street, and there was an incredible show called Def Poetry Jam, which was, when it was televised, it was hosted by Mos Def. It was part of Def Jam Records in the States, and this show was a bunch of poets that had featured as part of that program, put together in a kind of cabaret of all their poetry and brought to life on stage. So it's real, like, in the vein of where performance poetry, as we know as a term, came from, sort of from the 90s into the early 2000s. A contemporary idea of performance poetry. This is called Kite. I mistook a garbage truck for thunder. The morning after the first night we made love, I dreamt thunder was chasing rain through your neighbourhood, flooding the streets and keeping the two of us indoors for days or even weeks, until some old prophet could drop by in an ark to take us and the rest of the paired up animals to a very high place, or an island, maybe, where we could just sleep naked for a living. But the thunder was a garbage truck, and when my eyes woke up, a note on your pillow said, "Good morning, Sparkle Boy. I'll be back around noon. You make yourself at home." And so I did. Maybe I put on your slippers, which were as comfortable as bunnies because they were bunnies, and then shuffled over my new favourite hardwood floor to the bathroom, where maybe I took a bubble bath. Which is not something I can do in my place because, frankly, my tub is way too skanky to ever sit my bare ass down in. And then maybe I got so caught up in the romance of the suds, I started quoting old Latin poetry from my college days, like "Fulcire quondam candidi tibi soles," verily, a bright sun does favour me this morning, motherfucker. And then maybe I played with myself. But it's not what you're thinking. I'm saying possibly I just sort of stuck my hand up from the water going, "Somebody got laid last night. It was you." Or whatever. And then maybe I played with myself, and it's exactly what you're thinking. But if I did, it was only to put the mental motion picture of our naked night together on replay and replay and replay. So touching myself was just like TiVo in a way. And yeah, I was still wet when I borrowed your bathrobe. And yeah, I baked apples in your oven and then ate them with your honey. And yeah, I scared the birds away from your balcony with my antics dancing full blast to your old Prince CDs, because, please, let's just keep that my little secret. Because nothing is as private as a solitary dance, unless maybe it's standing in front of a full-length mirror in a borrowed pair of bunny slippers, slipping off a bathrobe, and then wishing to a light bulb that my name or my game or my whatever was bigger, wondering what kind of woman wants this skinny kid for her warrior. And so I made for you a kite, enormous, out of coat hangers, brown paper bags, and the masking tape from the drawer in your kitchen, and I hung it in the hallway where you couldn't hardly miss it, and I wrote, and I tagged that kite with my words. I wrote, "Just so you know, my weird mind wanders and my brave heart breaks, and I've nailed some milestones, but I've made some mistakes, 'cause I got more faults than a map of California earthquakes. I am taking a nap beneath your covers. Wake me if you like me. Wake me if you need me. Wake me if you need another poem. Your once and future lover has made himself at home."
Oh my god.
Mate, this was the training. This was the training ground. Seeing these people live this art form that was at this beautiful intersection of music and words and poetry and emotion and like I remember vividly watching the show. There was this Iranian American lassie who was part of the troupe who had done a piece about how her brother was essentially beaten up regularly by wandering around New York. So this is really early 2000s we're talking about, and how casual that was just because of who they were, and just her casual delivery of this piece meant that you were just fucking heartbroken. And just being able to see, like, this show opened my eyes to the power of words and that space where, so this is going back to Thick Skin Elastic Heart. As a writer and a maker, I am fascinated by what the intersection of a poetic language use and a characterful intent can place together. And this guy, Reeves, really opened my eyes to that, because actually it turned out, because I met the fucker, all of his shit was completely untrue. Wow! like all the poems that he wrote about were fabricated. There was one thing where he talked about how he was a teaching assistant in a deaf school, and as part of it he did ASL, American Sign Language, and he never taught at a deaf school. He was a teaching assistant. He did not understand that, but he crafted this like beautiful story, and you're like, you made me, you made me feel things, and it wasn't real.
Wow.
Yeah.
Just creation.
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining me today. Is there any final words you'd like to say at the end of our podcast recording?
I hope that everyone that's listening has a beautiful day, and if you're not having a beautiful day, then I'm sending you my love from my heart.
I guarantee you, on a screen, on a stage, sometime soon you'll be able to see this glorious human being. Fear not. Thank you, dear listeners. We shall see you again.
Bye.
Thanks for listening. We'll be back next Friday with a brand new episode of Belly Button Fluff on My Pillow. We release a fact sheet each week alongside the podcast that points our listeners to the glorious corners of the internet that we unearth during the episode. To download this for free, head over to Drew's website, www.drewmakestheatre.com. Cheers.